Good morning. Good morning, lovely people. Um, maybe we can start off. Maybe I'll just ask all of you just to briefly give your name, company, what you do in your job. So, in no particular order, Anita, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Mark and everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited. I think it will be a very interesting discussion. My name is Anita Döhler. I'm the CEO of the Next Generation Mobile Networks Alliance, also known as NGMN. We are an operator-driven global alliance with nearly 70 companies at the moment in NGMN, working on different very interesting topics in the pre-competitive area.
Thank you, Anita. Colin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Colin Bannon. I'm the CTO of BT Business.
Good, that's short and to the point, Colin. Excellent. You've done this before, I can tell. Mohamed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mohamed, the CTO of Orange Business.
Thank you so much. As you can see, an interesting, diverse panel. I'd just like to set the scene here and picking up on some of Annie's comments. The topic of this discussion is what is a telco for? Why do telcos exist and how must they evolve to meet market needs? It's kind of a philosophical discussion, if you like. I mean, it's crazy that we're here today even asking that question, given, as Annie says, that telcos are that basically create the foundation for our digital society. Nevertheless, we are where we are. And why are we where we are? Because telco revenues are flat, stagnating globally. We're just not keeping pace even with inflation or GDP growth. The hyperscalers are leaving us way behind. We haven't captured the value from connectivity, which we feel we should have captured. So when I often think about from the perspective of the customer, when we think about how much our customers rely on global connectivity, but what they pay us, the industry, for that, we really haven't captured that value through 3G, 4G, 5G, the move from DSL to fiber. We haven't grown our revenues from connectivity. Attempts at diversification have been mixed. And I'm being generous when I say mixed. So I think there's been pockets of success. If we go back 10 years, we've talked about TV. That's an increasingly tougher business. Pockets of growth in areas such as financial services, maybe in sub-Saharan Africa. On the B2B side, there are some growth areas, and we'll absolutely talk about that in services, integration services, and IoT, security, cloud, etc. Back to connectivity, it seems that if you were to ask me what is the main hope aspiration we as industry have, it's around what you might call differentiated connectivity. And I think what we mean by that is giving people, organizations, businesses, the type of connectivity that they need for a specific job, specific application at any given time. And there's lots of folks like around that. We could look at network APIs. That's all part of the same discussion. I think when we think about these new growth areas, we need to think about business and business models and value chains. Where do telcos sit in the B2B to X discussion, platform models, wholesale, etc. Something that we talk about a lot, but we not necessarily have the clarity that we need. And then lastly, I would say the last 18 months have been, I think we're talking about the power of AI and how telcos harness AI. And we know that telcos are already major consumers of AI. Can they be providers of services that are enhanced by AI? Okay, so that's just by word of introduction. So in this discussion we're going to first start addressing that question, what's a telco for? I'm going to mainly bring in Mohamed and Colin for that conversation. I think the second half we're going to pivot more to some of the technology underpinnings, and I'll let Anita lead some of that. So let's first start with the discussion about what's a telco for, and let's use the fact that we have Mohamed and Colin, who are both leaders in two of the dominant, largest providers of B2B services globally. And I think if we look at the last 5 to 7 years, there's clearly been a pivot in terms of operator growth expectation from B2C to B2B. And so maybe I could just ask Mohamed and Colin just to reflect on that in a moment in the context of their organizations, the extent to which this pivot is real in terms of aspirationally, and is a pivot proving successful, I guess is a bigger question. So Mohamed, maybe I'll let you start first.
I actually think from at least Orange perspective, it's more than a pivot. B2B is actually a part or a focus area in Orange, and that's why we have Orange Business, which is a part of the group strategy. And it's actually have a strong contribution to our revenue. So rather than a pivot, I actually would like maybe to drive the conversation how B2B can lead the next wave transformation for the telco industry in general. Especially that with what's happening on the B2C, that it became more complex market. It's actually more mature, price sensitive, and definitely highly competitive markets with a limit growth. B2B still we have the needs of the needs of enterprises, SMEs, and public sectors are becoming more and more complex, and connectivity. Even if I say right now connectivity is the base layer, it's still essential. It's still the key. But I believe that customers require more secure, sovereign, agile, data-driven, cloud-enabled, and even recently AI-enhanced solutions. And if we really look around, you'll find that every sector is going through a digital transformation in a way or another. And the provider which can offer cloud and IoT, edge, AI capabilities on the top of secure connectivity will be the strategic transformation partner, not just a connectivity provider. And we in Orange, trying, at least it's a part of our strategy. So we have in our platform strategy, we have the ambition, and that's exactly the ambition behind what we call Evolution Platform, where we are trying to build an ecosystem of services and partnership delivered in modular, scalable, but the most important, it's self-service mode for our customers, right? And in my mind, or I believe that it's not anymore a market shift or it's not a pivot. We really need to talk about a true business model shift. Where we are moving from talking about megabit per second, which is a typical, to actually start to think about how we can solve complex business problems. I think we should also...
If I can stop you, Mohamed. So you're talking about a switch from a B2B business based around connectivity revenues to one based around service integration revenues. Is that what you mean by business transformation?
Yes, it's connectivity is still the baseline for us.
Sure.
Connectivity is the underlying technology which is we need to build on, and we need to start with a secure connectivity. We need to believe that we own an asset, and we need to keep leveraging this asset. But we need to start to think how we can actually deliver a true value to our customers through solving the complex problems they have today. I can talk about AI, for example. If we start to think about the way AI with all the complexity around regulation in EU, so AI requires data, and data is getting more and more sensitive. It's us as a telco operator where we can start to think when and how to run AI workload on the edge device, where actually it's sitting at the customer premises, or even in our point of presence, if it's needed, or if the data is not sensitive enough, how we can run it into a hyperscaler. So how to work together to be able to leverage on that. And that's actually because we own the assets. And I'm not talking only about business model shift here. I also talking about we as a telco need to keep maintaining our strong telecom expertise with the connectivity, but also we need to start to build or to master a vertical knowledge. So we need to understand healthcare, for example. We need to understand manufacturing, and that's back to your point, the service integrator part. So we need also to start to think how to master delivering to the trust-sensitive sectors, which us as a European operators have leverage over other competitors. But I think the most important in my message here is, or what I'm trying to achieve, that partner ecosystem is a key. And we cannot do this alone. So we need to start to think in co-creating model, not just with our partners, but also with our customers on how to deliver values to our customer. And that's what I'm after. So it's we have an asset, we leverage in our asset, and we help to deliver more and more to our customers.
Mohamed, thank you. Now, Orange is Orange Business is a leader in the B2B space, but you're talking about this opportunity as if it's a future opportunity. I could probably have had this same discussion with you 5 years ago, and it wouldn't have been very different. So why is it taking us as an industry so long to realize this opportunity?
I think, to be very honest, it's not future. It's we have today. We have Evolution platform, which is live for 2 years for now, and we have close to 100 customers running today in Evolution platform, where they have the self-service models, where they are able to order. Let's just call cloud connectivity, which is beyond the typical connectivity in a self-service mode. But to be honest, it's actually, we are talking here about the transformation. So the industry didn't transform enough to be able to leverage the opportunity we have. And that's what we are doing in Orange Business. And that's, I believe, what my colleagues in BT are doing and other telco industries are doing now, how we can transform. And we in Orange Business, we are running a huge transformation in our, I will call it backend systems without going into EBC, CBQ. So we are actually transforming our backend systems as at the same time we are transforming, I will not call it our front end, but I will call it our user or customer adaptive experience layer, which is introducing the platform or introducing platforming to it.
Yeah. Mohamed, thank you so much. Colin, maybe I'll ask you to just reflect on that discussion.
Yeah, I think Mohamed made some brilliant points, and I would say that Orange is doing some very innovative stuff around their platform transformation, and one of the few telcos out there who are, how would you say, ripping off the Band-Aid and dealing with some of the very difficult parts of telco transformation. Maybe I just start with reflecting on this with a bit of history lesson. Telcos were the hyperscalers. They were very profitable, to your points, Mark, originally, incredibly profitable entities originally, and they virtually had the monopoly on communications at the point. However, I suspect they got a little complacent, and governments and regulations came in very, very heavily to break that up and to break the telcos up, break the monopolies up in the US, the bells, etc. And what's happened is, as vendors and over-the-top services and the internet has progressed, the very, very important communication services have got lost, and the margins and the profitability and the growth plateaued out for a while there. And most importantly, I think you had a dynamic there where for many years, the regulators had probably overcorrected in the market and squeezed very, very hard on that side, and it's an incredibly capex intensive business running the international infrastructures, and I think that that's one thing that sort of changed. And two, I would say that we as telcos collectively did a very poor job of communicating the value of, what are telcos in the B2B area? We're service providers. We provide services quietly behind the scenes that nobody ever sees, that are incredibly important, whether it be, connecting to, in the case of BT, 260 million devices around the world, running, about 3,600 POPs. The planes, the air traffic control that's flying in the sky, the hospitals that are running, the logistic companies that are running the insulin to the hospitals, the vaccine manufacturers defending the actual countries. The telcos have taken a beating over the period of the time, but behind the scenes, they've continued. Through COVID, we kept our countries running so everybody could keep on working from home. And we didn't do anything to communicate that value. So it's ended up being a sort of a cost equation where we're a utility, perhaps perceived by procurement directors, squeezing just a cost equation, not understanding the value equation. And collectively, as an industry, we need to elevate our conversation around value.
So thank you, Colin. So that discussion around services versus connectivity and networks, I think for people that don't follow the B2B space closely, it's a difficult discussion because, when we think about the services that you provide to, particularly to large enterprise and some smaller ones as well, it is based all around connectivity. When I think about services, I think about managed services. And again, with all due respect to you guys, the managed services business has not been a profitable business for telecoms operators. It's low single digit EBITDA. And if you're comparing yourselves with the Accentures and Tech Mahindras, you're kind of way behind. So, so are we talking about revenue growth from services, basically from people that you resell to enterprises, or are we talking about growth from a better connectivity experience, or is it a
May
combination of the two?
I answer that? I'll let my esteemed colleagues come in on that as well. I would say that the most and certainly I can only speak for BT. What we're redefining ourselves is a network as a service
Yeah,
platform company. So remember, most telcos out there, present company included, are still putting digital front ends on essentially what is still a very, very aging, very, very complex, traditional stovepipe set of stacks. Because each CEO that comes in wants to grow new services, so they're thinking about everything. And in the too hard bucket is transforming what the USP is, which is connectivity services. And they're just just putting digital front ends on what is a greater growing pile of tech debt. It's very, very hard. We know this. We've been doing this with Global Fabric for the last 3 years, rebuilding from the ground up, reimagining what a global platform for connectivity, ELAN, E-line, internet, MPLS, service insertion, digital front ends, all of that from the restack. It's incredibly hard and very costly to rebuild. However, I think to your question is, in our case, we're redefining ourselves as the connectivity part as a platform company that has routes to market and routes of inorganic growth that is not just through traditional account teams and managed service on top of it, but also have direct channels and indirect channels. So there's a flywheel and a platform effect where volume, because you do need to be a hyperscaler, volume matters because you get unit economics, and getting the unit economics back under control. It is impossible, I would argue, that any telco out there that doesn't commit to a full wholesale transformation of their platform from the bottom up, they will not be able to get to the unit economics to carry into the next century without replatforming. However, there's the second part is, how do you redefine what a lighter, more modern managed services is sitting on top of a platform company? So you've got these hybrid companies that are going into the future that is really, really exciting, particularly in this age where the one things that telcos definitely still have, you may argue they may not have, is trust. The countries still trust the telcos. There is a inviolate honor relationship with the country that they serve as a additional wing of the services, whether it be fire, emergency, communications is another one. There is no plan B without communications, and having that there, that trust has a value. And in this world where Europe is pivoting away from Americas with the geopolitical situation, sovereignty becomes, every conversation I'm having right now is going, what's the sovereignty story? I think it's a really interesting area. And for those telcos who are ready to pivot to take advantage of that, I think there's a great opportunity. Hopefully that helps.
Colin, Mohamed, do you want to pick up anything that Colin said there?
I actually think I agree with Colin line here. We have an opportunities which is not necessarily fully leveraged. One of them is the sovereignty, and I agree that we as a teleco are a critical infrastructure for the countries where we actually provide communication, and it's an opportunity for us to provide sovereignty in Europe and inside the countries where we are.
Yeah.
But I think back to your question, I still believe that connectivity is important, is essential, and it is the door opening, if we put it like this, for us. But we need to start to think about the services we would like to provide above the connectivity. It's not necessarily to provide a consulting service or to compete with Accenture and the service integrators. It might actually end that we need to work together to see how we can co-create together. solving complex problems now with the trust and with the sovereignty it requires us to coexist and co-create with what we call them today our competitors.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Mohamed. So I want to come back to connectivity.
Mark, can I add something?
Yes, Anita, of
Yes,
course
yes.
you can. I was going to keep you in the
Sorry,
background,
I know
Anita,
we
but
agreed that I
please
come in later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, all fine. Thank you. Just from my personal experience, I mean, in NGMN, we work, of course, more in a pre-competitive area. That's why we do not talk about margins and so on. But of course, we talk about the value to customers, to end users, and that everything what is related to network evolution and network development needs to meet customer value. So that's, of course, where we talk about those topics. But from a personal experience, because I used to work before I joined NGMN for one of the mentioned system integrators, consulting companies in the vertical industry area, I believe that what Mohamed and also Colin to some extent mentioned, that we need to understand better our customers in the B2B area, in the services area, is extremely important through partnerships or through other ways, because operators, and I think we are all in the industry since long, we used to work more in selling subscriptions, selling SIM cards, let's face it. And in the last years, it became extremely important to understand the business of the vertical industry much better. Of course, we cannot become experts, but I think that's where it's not only about moving from telco to techco, but it's about also understanding how a consultative sales approach works. Yeah, so that's just from my personal experience.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and that consultative sales is something that I have many conversations about that, and telecoms operators selling business solutions rather than just selling a connectivity service. And I don't know whether Colin would like to take that one in terms of thinking about that consultative selling and say selling solutions rather than a connectivity service.
Well, to the value sector market, of course, and Anita and Mohamed are absolutely right. You absolutely, we don't sell for these big multinationals, these $100 million, pound deals, euro deals. You're selling solutions. You're not necessarily selling products, and you're selling outcomes. You're essentially underpinning outcomes. And I would point to modern contracts and modern SLAs that are outcome based rather than just KPI based. Customers are getting fed up with individual ecosystems stovepiped that are just turning up on a resolver bridge on a Monday morning where they say, well, my platform's green and my platform's green and my platform's green, and yet horizontally that customer's end user experience of their customers is very poor. There needs to be a better way, and solution-based and outcome-based, and understanding modern contracts and modern solutions that deliver outcomes that are shared reward are much more important. However, I would say there's a huge maturity gap in current procurement. And of course, I would say this, current procurement best practice, because you have a set of consultancies out there who've made it their business over the last 15 years to take service contracts and break them into smaller and smaller atomic components and use game theory and to get the lowest unit economics from each component. My humble argument back would be that often is displacing the complexity and the pain somewhere else for the customer, and they wonder why they're not getting the right outcomes, where the procurement velocity has been purely commodity, whereas reality we should be having. So the most enlightened customers and the best outcomes right now is where you have really innovative CIOs who want to have a gain share and want to have an outcome-based conversation rather than letting their junior procurement teams with an external consultancy trying to just make it as, how much for that cable in that country and then spread it between 20 different suppliers is not great either. I think the top level, where it is an ecosystem, where you have a set of partners that are incentivized to work with each other, is where it works best, rather than this sort of scrabbling fight of seagulls for a few scraps, it doesn't deliver the right outcomes. So I think there's a change there that needs to have.
Yeah. Thank you. Just before bringing Anita back in, can we just reflect a minute on the connectivity business? And my understanding is telcos effectively want to start selling connectivity like hyperscalers sell compute services. That's kind of like the vision here, I guess. And we talk about network as a service, for example. So in my simple world, I think about connectivity. If you're going to increase your revenues from connectivity, you're either going to increase your prices, you're going to sell more connectivity, or you're going to bundle in other services with connectivity, such as security. So when I think about this rebirth of connectivity, connectivity is dead long-lived connectivity, I sometimes say, because we're now focusing on a business which we said was commoditizing. We said that a few years ago. So which of those is it? Is it more connectivity, higher price connectivity, or services on top of connectivity? Or all three?
I don't know. I'll let my colleagues come in, but Mohamed.
I actually think it's all three. I think we still will keep selling more connectivity. We even will start to consider selling faster bandwidths. If we really think about Gen AI, for example, it's like using a big part of our connectivity now, and it will keep using. So it's 3% of our traffic is used based on the text-based Gen AI. And then if you think about it, when you start to have the multimodal AI, or even when we go to agentic AI, which will have 100 times more hardware and GPUs than what we have today. So we'll keep selling connectivity, even we'll keep selling more faster bandwidths. But to be very honest, I believe that we should consider how we can make connectivity intelligent, contextual, how we can make it outcome driven, same as what Colin was actually talking. So how we start to think a little bit different. So we will keep we will keep having a grow in volume and connectivity or in performance in general, but the real opportunity come truly when we start to think beyond the connectivity. I can talk about network for AI and how we actually can make our network handle all the AI workload, but also how to add a brain to the network, actually, to start instead of seeing the header only, but to also analyze the body and try to understand the payloads and understand where we should execute or actually deliver this payloads, where from an infrastructure it could end that we need to provide more GPUs in our point of presence. So that's why I'm saying it might end the three together. We need to start to think selling more connectivity, selling more bandwidths, but also what's beyond the connectivity.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else like to pick that one up?
Yeah.
More connectivity,
Yeah, no,
higher price connectivity, services on top of connectivity.
Mohamed's spot on. I just add to that. Again, it's yes, all three, but I'd sort of layer it for maybe four things. One is the way to we've spent the last 5-10 years being gaslit by consultancies out there and vendors who said connectivity is not actually important anymore.
Yeah, we did.
and we need to back ourselves collectively, because now you have this value conversation where you have a customer who's running who wants to pay a few £1,000s a month for a circuit that they haven't built as a NAS. They just want a point to point, and yet they're putting 3 or 4 billion pounds worth of transactions through that circuit, and then they lose their minds when there's a subsea cable cut and believe it's a board-to-board situation. Something's broken there in that value equation, where the value of because let's be perfectly clear with each other, there is now no plan B if the network isn't working. There is very few businesses left in the world. Like even the credit card companies. Remember, you used a piece of paper when the credit card machine wouldn't work? You put the piece of paper on, you'd put your card on the machine, you go, ch-ch. They don't have those anymore. There is no plan B without the connectivity. Virtually every business operational process will not work if you lose your connectivity. And yet, we've just spent the last 5-10 years being told connectivity doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this? We need to fix that narrative. Also, we need to scale to get to the unit economics. So that means better I believe that there will be consolidation, particularly in the international market. You cannot build 10 new next generation NAS as a services internationally in 180 countries, and all of them only running 5% utilization. You're not going to get there are ladders to get. The reason the hyperscalers are doing so well, in part, is one, they didn't have the regulation that we had, which perhaps was a backlash to previous behavior, previous generations to us in telcos. But two, they've got scale, and they get the unit economics from scale. And if you have every telco doing everything around the world, subscale, but investing huge amount, the only people that are winning are the vendors. And the telcos are not, because they're investing on that. So that I think there's going to be consolidation in the market, or better wholesale, TM forum, the MEF, so that telcos are better at working with each other. So how our customers' traffic become transparent on how they travel across, and we focus on where we spend our CapEx more efficiently, or scale up and put more volume on less platforms out there, create some scarcity, really important. And then on top of that, you need to have this sort of omni-channel approach where you can do brilliant, lighter touch, less people intensive, lights out exchanges, fully automated, with more differentiated new services, because we haven't had that much innovation in connectivity. Business intent. Mohamed talked about some of the programmability in the network. A new telco needs to be able to inject those business outcomes into our cores, because our cores up until this point have been black boxes. We need our cores of our networks to actually work and be programmatic. Agility is another one. The cloud providers can spin up new workloads, new services at the speed the business requires, and then you put a change order into a telco and wait 6 weeks or 6 months for service to come along. There's a value perception. No wonder people can sometimes treat telcos with contempt. If the fixed line, the mobile, of course, Anita, is brilliant, but the fixed line is still very, very slow. We need to change that model. And then the additional digital services into value add. Though I would say, for me, you still need to transform and value your core assets. There's an incredible rich amount of assets in the ground right now, and investments that we have that should be monetized, not just always going, oh, we'll add something to the edge and ignore the core. I think it's both, and they need to be synergistic, and they need to add value to each other. Anything you're doing on the edge, my personal opinion, should be putting volume on the core. It should be additive. It shouldn't be a distraction. And I'll stop there and hand over to my colleagues.
So, Anita, thank you for waiting so quietly in the background there. But listening to all of these discussions, this isn't going to be possible without telcos transforming, automating. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do at NGMN, which is helping telcos to get ready for these new opportunities, be it in network for AI, AI for networks, be it for network as a service? I mean, there's so many different technology underpinnings that we need to look at.
Absolutely. And I mean, everything what was mentioned already by you and by Colin and Mohamed demands from the network quite some changes. So when the industry moved towards disaggregated networks end to end, and this includes also cloud native networks and cloud native solutions, the main intention was to first also foster a more healthy ecosystem, but to be able to react much faster on user demand, on customer demand, to increase flexibility and elasticity as well. What Colin already mentioned about the hyperscalers, and that's of course what the mobile network operators in general also aim for, to be able to adjust the network flexibly with the customer demand. And this demands an entire change in an organization. So it's not just technology, it's not just done by having standardized, for instance, a network function virtualization and implementing and deciding upon the cloud solution. It demands an entire change in the skills, in the processes, And this is where we in NGMN support operators. So first of all, of course, operators, we are contribution driven. So our membership works together on the outcomes and on the requirements in a collaborative way. And we don't do this in isolation. We do this also with other organizations. TM Forum is a cooperation partner, but also we work with the Linux Foundation network at the moment when it comes to assessing operators on their way to cloud native organizations, cloud native solutions. And what we have done starting already a few years ago, so we published, for instance, a Cloud Native Manifesto because our members, they realized that what they wanted to achieve by having a richer ecosystem, by having more choice with regards to vendors and solutions, and by being able to more flexibly react on demand, was a bit hindered by not getting from vendors really interoperable solutions. So interoperability is a big question mark still and demands a lot of testing. On top, of course, to all the other challenges by adjusting the entire organization for the new processes and by getting the new skills. And the other topic is how to adjust the operating models. So we have done valuable work in the industry, including vendors. So not only operators were working on that. About operating models operators can adopt for moving to disaggregated networks. So being it with the help of system integrators or by choosing one lead vendor or by doing it by themselves. It depends on the situation of the operator. So we have all different types of Stati in our membership. Or even by offering solutions to other operators, like some have done this, like Rakuten, for instance.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of choices, and most important from my perspective is that we as an organization, which is contribution driven, that we enable also best practice sharing, yeah, and that we never forget that we need to meet the user demand. So everything what we do needs to contribute to additional value to the user, and of course, also by ideally reducing total cost of ownership.
Thank you, Anita. Anita, do you think that we need some sort of rebalancing of the relationship between operators and their technology suppliers? And by that, I mean that, if we look in maybe 20, 25 years ago, we outsourced most of our knowledge, our technology roadmaps to the vendor community. Now I sense operators trying to bring some of that back in. I mean, is that a theme that you think is relevant to this discussion?
Personally, I think yes, absolutely. And you don't know it, Mark, but you touch or you trigger myself because when I was in the industry, beginning of the 2000 years, decades, I thought it's crazy to outsource your network because you outsource your knowledge. Yeah. And I even analyzed whether there are benchmarks providing feedback and results, whether it was worth it from an economic perspective. So I think it really depends on the situation of operators. As mentioned, we have more than 20 operators in NGMN, and some of them are large enough so they can afford to build own software teams. And that's also what I mentioned, even offer maybe services to other operators. Others are smaller and they simply cannot afford to build own software teams. So, of course, there is, and that's what I meant also with the different operating models. It really depends on an operator situation and choice with regards to whether to rely on a system integrator or on specific vendors. Or whether the operator can build own software teams to react on demand.
Yes, exactly. Because in outsourcing our technology roadmap, we outsourced our R&D as well, and telco R&D is very, very small at the moment. A comment in from, I think it's a comment rather than a question. Telcos, to be honest, are very, very slow and don't take decisions. It takes 6 months or longer and long RFP cycles. How do you move from proof of concept, POVs, POTs to commercialization within weeks? Yeah, good question. If anybody wants to pick up on that question before I hand back to Annie.
Is that, just to qualify, is that about our internal spend
Yeah,
decisions?
good question. Good
Or
question.
is that about buying from a telco? I
Yeah,
didn't quite catch that.
yeah. Well, maybe the anonymous attendee can just add to his or her question, whether it's internal or whether it's looking towards customers.
Well, why don't I answer on one, and then maybe let Mohamed answer the other lens. So from a buy, if you were a customer and the RFP side, like buying from, and I may have this wrong, the nature of the question, but telcos have, and I mentioned it, take too long today. And that's part of the response of the industry, certainly with a few of the telcos, is trying to move it to network as a service, where the sort of CPQ, the price to quote, the learn by get journey is all digitalized. And it's role based. So if you're entitled, you can actually get transparency of costs and run modeling and what if scenarios up front as to the decisions and designs that you make with your connectivity as part and parcel of where your workloads are being connected to clouds, etc. So reducing that timescale from 6 weeks to instant, and more importantly, be able to use a price quote tool, a modern digital interface where it's graphical, you can see where your workload is, you can understand what the quality of the connection is to that cloud, what its availability, the end user experience. All this richness in new tools is part of the transformation of a modern telco connectivity service, where they can make decisions and actually model designs to get the best TCO and get the power back and do it really instantly, where you could be spinning up connectivity, new SIMs, new capabilities, new connections, new distributed workloads, reducing the friction to seconds or minutes rather than weeks. That is the journey that we're running on right now outside. Internally, though, decision process, I'll hand over to maybe let my other colleagues decide why it takes so long for colleague, but why it takes so long for telco to make a decision. But I would say other industries don't necessarily have as high bar for it just must not fail. We are a critical national infrastructure and we power most of the other critical national infrastructures. So risk and operational resilience is incredibly high, because there are lives and souls depending on that communication services that we provide, and we take that incredibly serious. That's not to say that we have many cultural and operational and operating model issues, but I would say that on the bright side, there is we have to be super well considered and tested and secure, and that adds time to others who can just get it out there, take a chance, fail fast. The problem with us is we cannot be allowed to fail.
Yeah. So as much as I would love to give Mohamed the final word, I'm being told in no uncertain manner that we need to wrap up. So to Anita, to Mohamed, to Colin, thank you so much. It was a broad range discussion, but I very much enjoyed it. So thank you so much to you, and Annie, back to you.